Judy Gautier from the Bungalow here today. I'm in my sewing room and I'm going to be doing some table napkins. Now, it seems to me that every year at this time, I bring out the whole, I got to do a video on table napkins. And I've done numerous ones about table napkins, but I just like to do them. And this time I'm doing them with turkey fabric. Perfect for fall, even if it isn't Thanksgiving. You can bring them out all fall. Do I have this fabric at the Bungalow? No, I do not. I got this from Nancy Zeman's shop, or the sewnzp.com. I didn't order it online, but I went down to the shop in Beaver Dam, the one that's run by the beautiful, wonderful Deanna Springer and her sisters. They are so awesome. It's a great shop. Anyways, I have this fabric and I am going to make large table napkins. I want them to be not cocktail or luncheon. I want them to be a nice, solid dinner sized. So I'm going to start out by cutting them at 20 inches by 20 inches square. Okay, so now I have cut my squares to 20 inches by 20 inches. And I'm going to be making 8 of these. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark it so that I can miter my corners. And in order to do that, you are going to measure in the distance that you want the fabric to fold over to. Okay, so if I wanted this to fold over 2 inches, which I don't, I want it only maybe 1 1/4. I'm going to mark 1 1/4 inch line here and a 1 1/4 inch line here. So I'm going to take a pen and I'm going to mark 1 1/4, and I'm using just a regular pen because nobody's going to see this. Regular ink is not going to bleed into the other side of the fabric. This is going to be on the inside fold. So I am going to mark 1 1/4 on here and 1 1/4 on this side. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. So 1 1/4 inch lines. They have to intersect, but they only have to go about that far. You don't need them the whole distance of the side of the fabric, okay? I'm going to do that on all 4 corners. Okay, now I've got my lines marked on my wrong side of my napkin on all 4 corners. And now I'm going to find the 45-degree angle line on my ruler, okay? There you can see it's the 45-degree angle. Now I'm going to use that 45-degree angle to line that up on the edge of on this edge of my napkin. See how that's lining up? But it also has to intersect and line up. It has to intersect where these 2 lines come together, right there. And the edge of the napkin has to be lined up with the 45-degree angle. And I'm going to then make a nice line where that edge of my ruler is. And I'm going to do that on all 4 corners. So you can see there are the 2 intersecting lines and then my 45-degree angle. And I'm going to mark that on all 4 corners. Okay, now that I've done this, again, you can see my 45-degree angle line and my 2 intersecting lines. Now that I've done this, I'm going to fold this right sides together, and I'm going to make this come to a point here. See, I'm folding this right sides together. This is coming to a point, and I'm going to place my pin on that 45-degree angle line right there, okay? And then I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, but I'm going to tell you something important. We're going to sew along this 45-degree angle line. I'm going to make sure that this is lined up here too. Don't just put the pin in right here. You're going to put a pin in farther down here too, because that's going to hold it then at a perfect 45-degree angle. So you're putting your pin here, and then you're putting one a little farther down. Now, when I start sewing, I'm not going to start sewing right here on the edge. I'm not going to start sewing there. I'm going to start further in. So I'm going to make a mark to show you that I'm going to start sewing right about here. I'm going to put my needle down in right there. I'm going to leave a little bit of an opening, and you're going to see why I've left that little bit of an opening. So you can see from the picture or from the video here that I've got the pin through my 45-degree angle. I've made a little hash line there because that's where my needle stopped down, or I'm going to start with my needle in right there. And I've pinned a little farther down here too to keep that at a perfect 45-degree angle. And we're going to repeat this on all 4 sides. Okay, now you can see that I have stitched on that 45-degree line, and I've started my stitching here in that spot right there. I did not start at the very edge. And I'm going to repeat this for all 4 corners. Okay, and then I'm going to show you why we started further in instead of at the very edge. But I'm going to clip this at 1/4 of an inch away from that stitching line. I'm going to clip this off, okay? You will probably want to back stitch a couple of stitches right there, but again, don't let it go beyond that hash mark. I didn't need to back stitch because my machine automatically does a little lock thing right there. And you don't need to back stitch on this corner either, unless you really want to. It's not going to be a point of wear and tear. It's going to be sewn on the inside of your napkin. So go ahead and repeat this for all 4 corners. Okay, so now I've done that for all 4 of my corners, and this is how it looks. Now I'm going to turn the corners right sides out. And I am going to make sure that there is a nice, keep wandering over to that side of the camera, a nice sharp corner here by poking this out with a pin, or if you have some kind of a turning bodkin or whatever you use to get that corner nice and sharp, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to use my pin to pull that corner out. Okay, so I've pulled that corner out, and I'm going to turn all 4 of my corners right sides out. Okay, so now that I'm over at my ironing board, because I've got all 4 of my corners stitched like they're supposed to be, okay, and turned right sides out, here and here, all 4 corners. All right, now I'm going to press. Now, if you're new to this, you should be pressing so that the whole thing remains at 1 1/4 inches. So be measuring. I don't even if you're not new to this. I eyeball things so often because my eyes have gotten so good at seeing, you know, distances in terms of inches and sewing. But even I'm off every once in a while. I would bet that most of you have been sewing as many years as I have. You are the same way. Okay, so I'm going to measure that I've got 1 1/4 inches and it's remaining at 1 1/4 inches as I iron this down. And then continue to measure your 1 1/4 inches all the way around. I've got 1 1/4 inches. Oh, that's not quite 1 1/4 inches there. 1 1/4 inches, good. If you have glass head pins, you could just leave them right in while you're ironing this. I do not. I have plastic pins, so I can't leave them in. But that's the use if people have ever wondered why you need glass head pins. It's because they won't melt under the iron. All right. I'm going to iron this all the way around. And measure it at 1 1/4 inches each time so that I have the same perfect hemline on all 4 sides of my napkin. And I'm going to continue to do this all the way around. Okay, now it's going to become apparent as to why I didn't sew right to the edge here, why I left that little bit open, because now you're going to turn this little bit under right here. You're going to roll that tiny little piece under about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. Not quite a quarter. You're just going to roll that under a little bit because you want there not to be a raw edge right there, right? You don't want to leave it as a raw edge when you turn this end under. All right, so you want to be able to turn this under. And sometimes I use a little shish kebab stick or a toothpick or whatever to turn that edge under, a little wooden, and then press that under all the way around. And after you're done pressing, then you're going to put your pins in there and go to the sewing machine and pin this down because you can't do it now while you're ironing. So just turn that under a little bit. And then I'm going to repeat how I turned that edge under right here. Okay, so I'll show you on this one here. So you turn this edge under like this. Let's see if I can find my little skewer. Like this. And then this edge like this. See that? How nice that works when you use a skewer? Because that makes a perfect hem there so that there's no raw edge. You're not fighting that mitered corner. It just rolls right under. That's why you don't sew right to that edge. That's why you leave that edge. Now this technique will work for any size napkin. This technique will work for a luncheon napkin, will work for a cocktail napkin. And why would you purchase paper napkins when you can have these year-round? Well, if your answer is because I don't like ironing them after I have to wash them, well then send them to the dry cleaner. They'll wash them and iron them for you. And I know that's expensive, but think about it. The number of paper napkins you go through, and plus it's bad for the environment. So if you send them to the dry cleaners and let them iron them, and then you hang them up and you leave them in the closet till next Thanksgiving or next Christmas or whatever, if you have enough of these and you've got them for all the holidays, you know, or just take them out of the dryer, or don't dry them, hang them up to dry, right? Don't dry them in the dryer, hang them to dry. Then it makes the ironing a whole lot easier. So we're going to do this all the way around. And this really works nicely when you leave that little bit unstitched right there. And that keeps you from having a raw edge. And it just makes a beautiful, beautiful mitered napkin. So once that's all pressed under and you've pinned it, you're going to stitch right on that very edge. And I'm going to tell you what I tell my little 8-year-olds when I teach them to sew. You're going to stitch right along that edge without falling off the cliff. You want to stay as close to that edge as you possibly can so that this here doesn't flip out, right? You want to keep that tucked in, and I'll show you on the sewing machine how close we're going to get with that. Okay, so now I have taupe colored thread in my sewing machine, and I'm not going to start in the corner. I'm going to start a little farther down here because I want my corners to look really good. So I'm going to put my needle down. Now see how close I am to that edge? You don't want to be farther away. You don't want to start stitching way over toward the side this direction, okay? You want to stay as close to that edge as possible without falling off the cliff. And the reason for that is you don't want that little edge that you turned under to flip out, okay? Because this is going to be washed a lot. If you use these a lot, they're going to be washed a lot. And so this has to be something that is going to stay secure. All right, so you're going to backstitch or let your machine do the backstitching. And I'm going to stay as close as I can to the edge without falling off the cliff. That's what I tell my littles when I'm teaching them to sew. Keep that edge turned under and stay really, really close to that edge. This is not going to be a fast process because you're being very careful. Now when we get to the corner, always have your needle stop down on your machine. Your needle stop down should always be engaged. Keeps things from slipping around and moving. Okay, so now when I get to that corner, I'm going to have my needle stop right down into the seam, right there, right into that seam. And we're going to turn and make a perfect pivot. And we're going to sew all the way around this napkin. And it's going to be so delightful to have these beautiful napkins at your table that you're going to use over and over again. Don't fall off that cliff. Okay, so you're going to completely do this all the way around. And here we have a beautiful dinner napkin that you're going to have for years to come. Beautifully sewn, and it will last for a really long time. No more wiping your mouth one time and throwing it away. It is beautiful.